Okay, this week we're going to talk about fair use and copyright. Let me present my screen. Okay, so in this unit, it's kind of a light week. There's not too much work that really needs to be done. There's just one worksheet, and you do need to read over the PDF regarding the definitions. Oops, actually, I already have that open over here. Let's just click on it. And so there's some definitions in here that are important. Kind of goes through some basics, talks about the author's rights and the user's rights. Just read over that, become a little bit familiar with it. Then there's this whole thing about good faith and what that really means. And fair use is basically built upon the concept of good faith, where people who are reusing other people's work, their intent is really to do good. It's not to steal. It's not to take money away from the people or to steal the ideas of someone else to make something else. It's more about you're using it as a stepping stone in your own work of something that you were creating, a news story, for example, in our case. The two definitions that are important to understand are transformativeness and the amount. Transformativeness is about you actually using pieces of something to create something else. You're transforming the work into something else. The amount is important and is key because you can't use too much. Now, this is once again on a scale. What is too much? It really depends. Now, if you were to get in trouble because someone said that you stole their work or their ideas, it will be up to a judge in a court of law to determine if you use too much. That is the amount. It's really up to a judge. The key here is not to use so much that you get someone mad or upset that you stole their work, but enough to do what you need to do, okay? What you want to do is just be able to get in there under good faith, use a little piece of it, create something new, get your point across, and move forward. We're getting down into the section where they're talking about fair use. Teachers use this term often, and they're often wrong about fair use. Fair use just means that you can use, once again, the amount and the transformativeness, just enough to get your lesson done, or in a case of broadcasting or journalism, just enough to get the story across or the point of the story that you're trying to make, okay? Teachers oftentimes, a classic example is they want to show a video in class that has to do with education, whatever their lesson is, and they show a whole video. You're not allowed to do that. They're only allowed to show just enough of the video to use within their own lesson to get their point across. And so oftentimes teachers are they're wrong about this. They think just because they're teachers, they can use the whole thing and it's fair use. It's not. And that is also true for students. Permission and licensing. It is possible you could use a whole video or a whole book or a whole whatever if you can get permission from the author. Now, this is oftentimes, a lot of work to do. But it's also sometimes good if you're not using the whole thing, if you're even just going to use a part of something, sometimes it's a good idea if you just write them anyway. You never know. They might write you back and say, yes, go ahead. I did this one time with the video segment that I wanted to use, a little piece. I wrote it was a cook show actually, and I really liked a piece of it. It was like 10 minutes out of maybe a 30-minute show. And I asked the author, the publisher, if I can use that 10 minutes in my own video to demonstrate a teaching practice. And they wrote me back and they said, yes, go ahead. So you could just go ahead and write them. More than likely, they're not going to write you back, but it's kind of cool and neat when they do actually write you back. And that's a nice thing to know. So asking for permission is important. Also, before I go there, in Google, when you're using Google tools like the Google search engine, there's actually within tools, and if I were to open it up for you and show you really quick, you probably already know this, but if you do a search like cook show, I don't know, since that's in the top of my head, right? you go here, and I want to look for images that have to do with cook shows, and I go up into tools. There's a section in here called usage rights, and when you're looking for images, you can actually look for labeled for reuse or with modification or slight modifications or non-commercial use. And you can use any of these pictures. They already gave permission to Google, so you don't have to technically cite where you got it. So that's one way to make sure that you don't get in trouble. You could use that, by the way, as part of your answer in the worksheet. The next section here is talking about frequently asked questions. I really highly recommend that you read this or read over it. It gives you some ideas that might trigger something in your brain to help you in the writing of your answers in the worksheet, which is right here. There's only 3 questions. They're very simple. The hardest one will probably be number 1, which is give an example of transformativeness or amount. It could be either or both. Think about a time either you or a friend, working on a project perhaps, or you used pieces of something, or you changed something, or you only used a piece of it. You could even think of a time a teacher did this, like maybe they were explaining a lesson and part of it had to do with the video or images. Maybe it could be your art teacher and they're showing you images and they cited or noted who the author was or the artist. Or you could just make up an example, like, you're going to make a news broadcast show and you want to do a story about, I don't know, a movie that just came out for the entertainment section. And, how much of the movie would you show? Would you cite it? Would you ask the actual publisher for permission? What are some of the things you would do? So go ahead and write something about that. And then fair use. I want you to come up with your own definition. This sometimes can be very difficult. What I like to do sometimes when I'm coming up with the definition is actually copy and paste and then go back and tweak and modify and think about it and reread it and change it and move this word, change this word, move things around. Just take, about 3 to 5 minutes. It doesn't really take that long to wordsmith, an answer to make it your own, okay? And the last one is, what are some of the things you can do to make sure you are fairly using work of others? I've already mentioned some stuff, right? The Google fair use thing is one. Paraphrasing, citing the author, using only a piece of it, writing and asking for permission. There's many things you can do. You could probably write a whole page on this if you wanted to. You don't have to do that much, but tell me, what would you do to make sure you wouldn't get in trouble? Okay. That's really it for this week. We will meet on Thursday, and we will go over some of this. I also want you to start thinking, if you watch this little clip that I'm giving you right now, if you're actually going to watch it, I want you to start thinking about the end of the term right before we go off to summer. I'm probably going to have you make a little either written news article or a little video, not more than 2 minutes. You could just do that using your smartphone. Maybe a little news story of something that's going on. It could be, a news story about, your experience and your parents' experience, your siblings. It could be your friends. You can interview them about what was it like to do distance learning, or what was it like to have to move from your home in Burkina Faso to live somewhere else, to shelter in place for a while. It could be, it could be a movie you watched over the, the course of this last 2 months, or maybe it could be an upcoming movie that's coming up this summer that you want to see, or a news story about, where you think the COVID, is going to, how it's going to affect us in the summer or maybe next school year. It could just be a little news article. It doesn't have to be very much, 1 page or a 2-minute video. That will be due in the last week. You don't have to do anything right now, but you might want to start your brainstorming and thinking about that. We'll talk a little bit about this on Thursday as well. Once again, if you have any issues with this or using Google Classroom, I notice you're all using it pretty well now. There's a couple of you that are still kind of having trouble with the using the worksheet within the Google Classroom and turning that in, but you're getting closer. So keep working on it. If you need help, just email me and then we'll set up a time I could meet with you online and help you. It could even be for other classes as well. It doesn't have to be this one. Have a good week, and I'll catch you, I guess, at the end of the week on Thursday. This will all be due on Sunday again. Okay.